While there's a lot of talk surrounding Brock Nelson and Noah Dobson, another Islander needs a new contract this offseason. What is Simon Holmstrom's value to the Islanders, and what kind of deal will they sign him to? We've got that, plus Brock Nelson at Four Nations, and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers. So glad you could join us today and talk a little Islanders hockey. We've got a lot to get to. We'll talk about Brock Nelson at Four Nations. We'll talk about some future decisions the Islanders have to make about their defense core. But first, Simon Holmstrom. He needs a new contract this offseason. What will it look like? Well, there's a lot to unpack with that. Holmstrom is a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. So he needs a new contract this offseason. And we have seen great improvement from Holmstrom in this, his third NHL season. He already has 14 goals in 48 games. He's missed 7 games due to injuries. His career high was set last year, 15 goals in 75 games. He has 30 points already this year. Last year, he only had 25. Clearly, we are seeing a better performance offensively this year from Simon Holmstrom, and that is in addition to his already strong positional play and the fact that he also helps kill penalties. He's not likely to match last year's 5 shorthanded goals. He has 1. He's even seen a little time on the power play this year. He's got a goal and 2 assists with the extra attacker. And again, he can check. He's got a nice, decent amount of speed and burst. And I think the best aspect of Simon Holmstrom's game is his awareness, his hockey IQ. He sees the ice well, knows what position he needs to be in, does back check, picks up his guy. On a team that lacks a lot of players who do that, Simon Holmstrom is getting that job done. We're seeing also more offensive play from Holmstrom. Last year in 75 games, he attempted 152 shots, had 72 shots on goal. This year, in only 48 games, he's attempted 137 shots. So, he only needs 15 more shot attempts in his last 27 games to match last year's total. And then he needs 15 more shots on goal in those 27 games to match the total, again, of last year's shots on goal. He has picked up his game offensively. And every dayers, you'll recall, I have indicated that I think there is more to give offensively. Holmstrom is kind of on pace, if he played a full 82 games, to maybe score 22, 23 goals. I think that, this year he'll probably finish around 20, 21 because of the games he's missed. And, he is capable, if he continues to have his confidence grow, to be even more dangerous offensively. I think he has the upside to be a consistent 20 to 25 goal scorer. And again, he has to be with the right line mates and maybe the right coaching staff, the right sort of style of play for him to reach those milestones. That is going to be important for sure, but I think the potential is there. It's just a question of getting him to play that style of game. And the other thing that you're noticing this year, Patrick Waugh has more confidence in Holmstrom. He's playing more minutes. He's averaging 16 minutes and 11 seconds per game this year. His average a year ago was only 13-19. So he is up by almost 3 minutes on ice per game this year. And that reflects the fact that his coaches clearly see the improvement in Holmstrom's game. So, what do we know when it comes to these situations? How have the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello handled these kind of situations? We have two players who have gone before Holmstrom in similar circumstances, former number one picks whose entry-level deal is about to expire. Those are Anthony Beauvillier and Noah Dobson. What did Lou Lamoriello do with both of them? He signed them to bridge deals, and that remains the most likely outcome for Simon Holmstrom, a bridge deal. Now, I mentioned he is eligible for arbitration this year. That means that the Islanders sort of have a decision to make. If they cannot agree on a bridge deal for Simon Holmstrom, he can go to arbitration, sign a 1-year deal based on what the arbitrator decides, and both the player and the team more or less will have to go by that. If not, what would a bridge deal look like? And the estimate I have is you're looking at a 2-year deal at either 3 or 3.5 million, something in that range per season. And obviously, if he ends up, finishing the season strong, he could get a little bit more than that. If he slumps down the stretch, that number could go down a smidge, but I doubt it because of the other aspects of his game. And, you talk about the offensive upside. Right now, Simon Holmstrom, his shot percentage is number one on the Islanders with 24.6%. His career shot percentage is 20.8% over 3 seasons, and he has never had a shot percentage below 15.4. If he can shoot a little bit more and be more confident in that aspect of his game, that's when I get the feeling he could be that 25-goal guy, maybe even a little bit more, but he'll need to sort of develop that. So you could sign him to a long-term deal, but that's not typically what Lou does. And, maybe it's not Lou by the time we get to arbitration this offseason. We'll see about that. I still think Lou will be back if he wants to be back, but, that's still up in the air. But I think that there's very little reason at this point to trade Simon Holmstrom. He is still young. He is still on the upswing. He is on the way up when it comes to his career. And at the age of right now 23, he doesn't turn 24 until around Memorial Day in the United States, late May. I think we are going to see more and more from Simon Holmstrom as he develops into a complete NHL forward. So your 3 choices are your long-term deal, which I guess if you're really confident that Holmstrom is the guy, you lock him up now to a longer contract because you want to lock him up and make sure he remains an Islander long-term. I don't think that's the wisest move. You could just sign him to the 1-year arbitration, deal or a 1-year deal. I don't think that's the wisest move because you risk after another strong season that he leaves and the price goes up. I think the 2-year bridge deal makes the most sense. It gives a little security to Holmstrom. It gives the Islanders a little bit more long-term planning for 2 seasons. And then if he continues to play well and continues to develop into a solid NHL forward, probably a middle 6 guy, a second or third line player, then, you end up paying him more for the next deal, as the case may be. But the Islanders need to settle this. I don't see them trading Holmstrom. If they do, I think it would have to be part of like a deal for a guy like Mitch Marner, a blockbuster. And in that case, Holmstrom is more likely the throw-in guy than he is the guy that, is the main component of the trade. But odds of that are somewhere between, fairly slim and none. And I think Holmstrom is back on the island next year with a new contract and with a bigger role in the team. Probably has his minutes go up again, but obviously a lot of that will depend on the other moves made by the New York Islanders between now and the start of next season. So we'll keep an eye on the Simon Holmstrom situation. But right now, Holmstrom, again, I think has done really well. Good chemistry between Holmstrom and J.G. Pageau. They seem to be working well together. The third guy on that line, though, has sort of been interchangeable over the course of the season. And we'll see if they, right now it's been Casey Cizikas, but we'll see if they alternate anyone else. We've seen before he was let go, Oliver Wahlstrom, Simon. We have seen Cizikas, Hudson Fasching has had some time. Pierre Engvall has had some time in that role. A lot of guys have had a few minutes on the wing alongside J.G. Pageau and Simon Holmstrom, but those two are the core of the Islanders' third line. All right, we have got a lot more to get to on today's show. Four Nations tournament, boy, it's been a pleasant surprise. We're going to talk about that, the performance of Brock Nelson, Team USA, and a whole lot more. Plus, the Islanders will have some decisions on defense when everyone gets healthy. Who stays, who sits, who goes? We'll have all of that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you could place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Four Nations, I have to say, it has by far exceeded my expectations as far as the way this tournament has played out. And if you were fortunate enough Saturday to watch that game between the United States and Canada, it had a little bit of everything, was probably even more exciting than your typical mid-season NHL game. I did not expect any fighting in this tournament. I wasn't even sure if there would be a lot of physicality. And yet there it was, 3 fights in the first 9 seconds of this game between Team USA and Team Canada. You then had some physicality, some checking throughout the game. You had a beautiful opening goal by Connor McDavid, and then the goaltending of Connor Hellebuck shuts it down for Team USA. I think he is the difference so far in this tournament. Jake Gensel with 2 goals, one of them an empty netter. Dylan Larkin a goal and an assist, including the game winner. And look, when you end up holding Team Canada to just 26 shots on goal, when they have McDavid, Marner, Crosby, McKinnon, Stone, Point, Bennett, Reinhart, Marchand, Jarvis, that list of forwards is just outstanding. And obviously, Team USA doing a good job. And there was electricity in this game from even before the puck was dropped. The fans, obviously, because of the tensions right now between the governments of the United States and Canada, the fans in Montreal booing the American national anthem, that added to the tension. And then you have everybody dropping the gloves. So crazy, crazy kind of a start to the game with the Tkachuk brothers and JT Miller all involved in fights. But wow, just fast paced, well played, entertaining hockey, which I did not expect necessarily. And Brock Nelson, okay, no shots on goal, one hit, but 13 minutes, 29 seconds of ice time. He's playing a bottom six role. We talked about the limited number of shots that Team Canada had. You know, when Sidney Crosby has no shots on goal, Mitch Marner has one, Nathan McKinnon has one, you're doing something right. And Brock Nelson is a part of that bottom six for Team USA that helped limit the very dangerous players on Team Canada. And it wasn't just Canada and the US who provided entertainment. Finland upsets Sweden in overtime 4-3 with Mikael Granlund with the overtime game winner. That was an exciting game. So Sweden has lost 2 games in overtime. Finland and Canada 1-1. Team USA 2-0. Team USA guaranteed one of the spots in the final now. And the best news, obviously, Brock Nelson so far playing well, has not, gotten injured. Shea Theodore already injured on the Vegas Golden Knights. So Theodore, week to week, you never want to see injuries. And maybe that's part of the paradox of Four Nations. You want to see physical hockey. You want to see, the effort and the checking and all of that, but you don't want anyone to get hurt. That would be a disaster. So fingers crossed that Brock Nelson gets out of this tournament healthy. That was my biggest concern going in. I obviously, as an American, I'm rooting for Team USA. And since the only Islander is also on Team USA, more reasons to pull for the Americans. But most of all, no injuries. Islander fans, everydayers, I don't have to remind you that we have seen in exhibitions before, the Olympics and this are largely exhibitions, even though there is national pride on the line. But you go back a decade, everydayers will remember John Tavares getting injured in the Olympics, being lost for the rest of the season, and the Islanders, who were in the thick of the playoff hunt when the injury took place, just spiraled down the standings, did not make the playoffs that year. That is the worst case scenario. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. And hopefully Brock Nelson continues to play his role well. And most importantly, we see some very entertaining hockey in the last round robin game, and then the final. Team USA will play somebody, and it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But we will keep you posted on the play and progress of Brock Nelson throughout this tournament. And it's been exciting to watch Four Nations. I really didn't expect the hockey to be this good, and I'll say this. I know the All-Star game is coming to UBS Arena. The Islanders are hosting it for the first time in 40 years almost, and that's a good thing. But as far as the quality of hockey and the excitement of the event, Four Nations, compared to an All-Star game, give me Four Nations tournament all day, any day. The level of hockey, the quality of play, even just going to the 10-minute overtime, 3-on-3 in the overtime, 5-on-5 through the rest of the game. These are all positive things that I have really enjoyed about Four Nations. And the fact, I'll add this, the fact that there's only one Islanders player in the tournament, no divided rooting interests. If there was, let's say, a Team Russia and Maxim Siplikov and Ilya Sorokin were playing. That complicates things a little bit because you have Islander players on different teams. And, if Holmstrom was on Team Sweden, then all of a sudden you got divided loyalties, you got rooting interests in different teams. But even so, better this than an all-star game where the guys are really not giving their all and there's no physicality and it's these 3-on-3 mini games. It's so far removed from regular hockey. I am glad they're going to do this again, and I like what I've seen so far from Four Nations. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. The Islanders, a couple of their injured defensemen are supposed to start skating this week. What's going to happen when Scott Mayfield and Ryan Pollock and Noah Dobson return to the lineup? Who sits? Who gets released or sent down to the minors? Who plays and how much? A lot of decisions to make. That plus our Islanders' birthday of the day, a checking center who was a big part of the Islanders in the mid to late 70s as part of the Banana Line. Let's see if you can guess who this Quebec native was. We've got that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Stanley Cup. Well, the same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, everydayers, there's some tough decisions ahead for the New York Islanders. We know with all the injuries to the defense corps, Mike Riley, Noah Dobson, Scott Mayfield with a more of a minor injury, Ryan Pollock with an injury, all these guys who are out, well, two of them are supposed to come back. Mayfield, Pollock, supposedly going to resume skating at some point this week, according to published reports. Now, how long they'll actually still remain out, maybe they skate on their own for a week, rejoin the team for non-contact practice, then contact practice, then they come back and maybe even have a 1 or 2 game conditioning stint down in Bridgeport. All of those are possibilities. But let's just say it's safe to say at least one of these guys is going to come back in the next couple of weeks. And, what happens to the Islanders and their new defensemen? Because Lou Lamoriello added Tony DeAngelo, Scott Perunovich, and Adam Boqvist. And to varying extents, all of them have played better than expected. DeAngelo, a goal, 4 points in 8 games. He's a +2. Perunovich has 3 helpers in 7 games. He's a +1. And Boqvist has a goal in 5 games and is even. These guys are, adding another dimension to the Islanders because while they lack size, they do do a better job maybe than some of the previous defensemen at actually clearing the zone, skating the puck out of the zone, transitioning from defense to offense. And everydayers, I don't have to tell you how much of a problem that has been for the Islanders this year, last year. Keep going. We've seen too many instances of the Islanders being unable to get the puck out of their own zone in a timely and efficient manner. And too often, those mistakes end up with turnovers, and the puck is in the back of the Islanders' net. So, I think you sort of have to look at it as a hierarchy. I think out of the three, DeAngelo has played the best. I think he is probably the one who sticks the longest. It'll also depend to an extent on left shot, right shot, who comes back. All of those things are factors. But I think as long as he continues to behave himself and play well, DeAngelo is probably the most likely to stick around the longest. I think Perunovich would be next. Boqvist would be third on the list. He'd probably be the first one to sit out. But again, do you end up having these guys be the black aces? And, you send, let's say, Dennis Chalowski down to Bridgeport? Or do you send one of these guys down to Bridgeport? Or do you waive them or try to trade them? Does DeAngelo have some value at the trade deadline? All of these things are possibilities. From an asset management standpoint, if you want to trade Tony DeAngelo as a rental and you're confident that, all of your injured players are going to be back, or that you can use some of the other guys, Perunovich or Boqvist, to continue to play and fill in, taking a guy who you signed to a league minimum prorated contract and turning him into a younger player, a prospect, a late round draft pick is still good asset management. So we'll see how this all plays out. I think this is a good problem for the Islanders to have. The only concern is, how does Lou Lamoriello manage this situation? It'll be interesting to see how it plays out between now and the trade deadline and beyond, because while you can't trade these guys after the trade deadline, you can waive them. You could try to send them down. You can do some other things, and that will be interesting to see how it plays out. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Sunday was the 72nd birthday of former Islanders center Andre St. Laurent, the native of the province of Quebec, 5'10", 180 pounds, fourth-round pick of the Islanders back in 1973, played 42 games for the Islanders that year that he was drafted, 5 goals, 14 points. Stayed with the Islanders until early in the 77-78 season when he was traded to the Detroit Red Wings, and he enjoyed his best offensive season there with 31 goals and 70 points. St. Laurent, part of the banana line with Bob Nystrom, Gary Howitt, one of the fiercest checking lines for the Islanders in the mid to late 70s, and did a great job of forechecking and limiting the opposing team's offensive stars to, limited opportunities, and helped slow them down. One of his better games as an Islander, January 28th, 1975, the Minnesota North Stars invade the Nassau Coliseum. Pete Lopresti, the goalie for Minnesota, battling Billy Smith, the Hall of Famer, in between the pipes for the Islanders. And the Islanders get on the board first when our Islanders birthday of the day, Andre St. Laurent, scores his 5th goal of the year. Lorne Henning and Ed Westfall with the assists, and that made it 1-0 Islanders. Islanders led 3-1 after 40 minutes when Andre St. Laurent set up Bobby Nystrom, Gary Howitt the other assist. That made it 4-1 Islanders. Doug Hicks pulled Minnesota to within 4-2 less than a minute later, but Andre St. Laurent answers again for the Islanders. Howitt and Nystrom with the helpers. That made it 5-2. An shorthanded goal, by Lorne Henning closed out the scoring. Islanders beat the North Stars 6-2. 18 saves for Billy Smith to get the win. But for our Islanders birthday of the day, Andre St. Laurent, 2 goals, 1 assist. He's a +2. He had 5 shots on goal. Only Billy Harris with 6 had more. Andre St. Laurent, a good checking center. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, don't forget, we're back tomorrow. We're going to have some special guests this week. So make sure you look for that, and I will announce it on Twitter as soon as these interviews are finalized. But I am very much looking forward to those 2 interviews that I'm working on setting up. Make sure you join us for that. We'll also have the latest updates on 4 Nations and any injury news that may come down the pike. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.